Welcome to Soul Stories, where every tale touches the heart, inspires the mind, and stays with the soul. Asterisks, a restaurant buzzed with the usual evening rush, clinking cutlery, soft murmurs, and the occasional burst of laughter from families enjoying dinner. Amidst the hectic flow, Arham moved swiftly between tables, balancing trays with practiced ease. He had been working double shifts lately, trying to save enough to support his mother's medical bills. The job was tiring, but Arham carried himself with quiet patience and a warm smile that never faded, no matter how exhausting the day became. Asterisks and nights. However, a particular customer caught his attention more than the rest. Mr. Rayan Malik, well-known millionaire. Rayan was the kind of man people recognized immediately. His tailored navy suit, polished shoes, and the subtle confidence he carried marked him as someone important. Guests whispered to each other, stealing glances at him, but Rayan remained withdrawn, absorbed in his meal and his thoughts. Arham approached his table cautiously. "Sir, is everything all right? Do you need anything else?" Rayan barely looked up. He gave a small nod but said nothing. His expression was unreadable calm, maybe a little tired, but distant. Arham didn't take it personally. He had served people from every background, and he knew that silence wasn't always rudeness. Some customers simply preferred to be left alone. Throughout the meal, Arham checked on him politely, making sure the food was warm and the service smooth. Rayan's behavior never changed. He remained quiet, finishing his dinner without showing the slightest emotion. When he finally stood up, he adjusted his cufflinks, slipped his phone into his pocket, and walked straight out of the restaurant. Arham waited for a moment, expecting him to return to the counter and leave a tip or at least acknowledge the service, but the door closed behind Rayan without any such gesture. Arham let out a small, weary sigh. It wasn't the lack of money that bothered him, it was the lack of appreciation. He had worked so hard all day, dealing with rude customers, messy tables, and endless orders. A small acknowledgement would have felt like a reward. Still, he refused to let disappointment shape his attitude. Keeping his professionalism intact, he went back to the table with his usual polite calm. He gathered the glasses, arranged the plates, and began to clear the table exactly the way he always did. To him, work was work. No matter who the customer was, Ritz or poor Arham believed everyone deserved respectful service. As he reached for the last plate, the dim light reflected off something unusual beneath it. He paused, confused. Something was lying underneath. And that was when everything changed. As Arham lifted the last plate, his fingers suddenly stiffened. Something didn't feel ordinary. The plate was slightly heavier on one side, as if hiding a small object beneath it. Curious, he tilted it upward and froze. There, resting neatly on the white tablecloth, was a folded envelope. Not just any envelope. It had his name written on the front. Arham, for a moment, he simply stared at it, unsure whether his eyes were deceiving him. His heart gave a hard, unexpected thump in his chest. Customers sometimes left notes, complaints, compliments, or forgotten scraps of paper, but never had anyone left something specifically addressed to him. He looked around the restaurant instinctively. The evening rush had calmed. The clatter had stopped. A few diners were still chatting, and the hum of the air conditioner filled the room. But the millionaire, Mr. Rayan Malik, was nowhere in sight. He had already left. Arham swallowed, feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Why would a man like Rayan leave him an envelope? And why hide it under a plate instead of handing it directly? Carefully, as though it were fragile glass. Arham picked up the envelope. The paper felt thick and expensive, nothing like the cheap stationery used in the restaurant. His name was handwritten in bold, elegant strokes, as if someone had taken time and precision to write it. His pulse quickened. This wasn't ordinary. He slipped a finger under the flap and opened it slowly, expecting a polite thank you note, or maybe a message about something he had forgotten. He had no idea what awaited him. Inside the moment he pulled out the contents, his breath caught. It wasn't just a note. It wasn't a simple compliment. It wasn't even a short message. It was a letter carefully written, folded perfectly, and surprisingly long. As he unfolded the first section, his hands began to tremble. The handwriting was the same elegant style. At the top was a line that made his stomach flip. This is for you, Arham. Please read it carefully. Just that. Sentence sent a rush of questions flooding through his mind. Why would a millionaire know his name? What did he want to say? What could possibly be so important that he would leave it secretly? Arham glanced toward the entrance one last time, half expecting Rayan to walk back in and explain everything. But the door remained still. With a deep breath, Arham focused his eyes on the letter and began to read. In that instant, he had no idea that what he was holding would change his life forever. Inside the envelope was a neatly folded handwritten letter. The moment Arham opened it, the soft paper crackled gently between his fingers. His eyes scanned the first line, and he felt the breath leave his lungs. Asterisk, you didn't complain. Even though I tested your patience today. He blinked, unsure if he was reading correctly. He had tested his patience. Asterisk had Mr. Rayon deliberately acted distant and silent. His eyes moved to the next sentence. I've been watching how you treat every customer with dignity and kindness. Asterisk Arham's heart tightened in his chest. He had never imagined someone like Rayon Amelia, a man who lived in a world far different from his own, would pay attention to the way he worked. Most people came in, ate, and left without a second glance. Very few noticed the long hours, the stress, or the effort behind every polite smile. Asterisk bought here, in his hands, was proof that someone had noticed. Asterisk. He continued reading, his hands trembling slightly. Asterisk, people like you deserve opportunities. Asterisk said sentence hit him harder than anything else. Opportunities. It was a word he had chased his whole life, hoping for a chance to improve his family's situation, to build a better future, to rise above the struggles that seemed to follow him everywhere. He had dreamed silently but never expected anyone else to recognize those dreams. Asterisk as he reached the end of the letter. Another piece of paper slipped out, a rectangular slip that fluttered down onto the table. A checker stared at it for a long moment, unable to react. The numbers stared back at him boldly. Asterisk 1 million rupees. 1 million. He blinked twice, then a third time. He even rubbed his eyes, certain his exhaustion was creating illusions. But the number didn't change. It was real, printed, signed, and dated. Asterisk, his knees felt weak, and he had to grip the edge of the table to steady himself. Never in his life had he held so much money in his hands. It didn't feel possible. It didn't feel real. Why would a wealthy stranger give him such an enormous gift? Asterisk's thoughts raced through his mind: his mother's medical bills, his siblings' school fees, the debt he had been struggling to pay off. 1 million rupees could transform everything. It could give them stability, peace, and hope. Asterisk, but above all, it was the trust behind the money that overwhelmed him the most. Asterisk. The idea that someone saw his hard work and believed he deserved something better. Asterisk. He looked around the restaurant again, half expecting Rayon to appear and tell him this was all a mistake. But the doorway remained empty. Asterisk still shaking. Arm clutched the check and the letter to his chest, realizing this was not just generosity. Asterisk. It was the beginning of something far greater, something he had never dared imagine. Asterisk. Just as Arham was trying to understand the reality of the letter and the check in his hands, the restaurant door opened again. The soft chime echoed across the quiet room. Arham looked up and his eyes widened. Asterisk. Rayon Malik was walking back, inside. Asterisk. The millionaire's steps were calm, deliberate, almost gentle. He wasn't in a rush. He wasn't distracted. He walked straight toward Arham's table with a faint, annoying smile on his face, as if he had been waiting for this moment. Asterisk. I didn't forget to tip, Rayon said quietly, his voice steady and warm. I was checking if you work for more, with heart. Asterisk. Those words struck Arham deeply. The entire day replayed in his mind: the long shifts, the exhaustion, the many times he had kept smiling even when it was difficult. He had never expected recognition. He had never expected anything more than a simple thank you. But now, hearing those words from a man of such stature, he felt a sense of validation he had never known before. Asterisk. Arham opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. His throat felt tight. His eyes stung with emotion he struggled to control. He simply stood there, overwhelmed, holding the letter and the check like they were pieces of a dream he was afraid might disappear. Asterisk. Rayon reached into his pocket and placed a small, elegant business card on the table. Asterisk. His name, title, and company logo were printed in gold. Asterisk. Come see me tomorrow, he said. I want to offer you a job at my company. Your attitude is rare. I can teach skills, but I can't teach integrity. People like you make organizations stronger. Asterisk. Arham stared at the card in disbelief. A job offer? From a millionaire? That too, after receiving a check large enough to change his entire life. Asterisk. He looked at the check again, then back at Rayon. The reality of the moment began to sink in, slowly. His future, which had always felt uncertain and limited, suddenly opened up wide, full of possibilities he had never even imagined. Asterisk. My mother, Arham finally whispered, barely finding his voice. This will help us, sir. I don't know how to thank you. Asterisk. Rayon's smile softened. You already did, with your kindness, with your patience, with the way you treat people. That is your thank you. Asterisk. For the first time in his life, Arham felt seen, not as a waiter, not as a struggling worker, but as a human being with value and potential. Asterisk. Rayon gave him a final nod before turning to leave. I'll expect you at 10 in the morning. Don't be late. Asterisk. When the door closed behind him, Arham remained frozen for a moment, staring at the check, the card, and the letter spread across the table. Asterisk. His hand shook not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that everything had changed. Asterisk called because he chose to stay kind, even when no one appeared to be watching.